Can you tell us whether or not you are under investigation by the Treasury Department?
As far as I know, the New York Times has not confirmed it either. They keep asking us for confirmation, so they're reporting rumors at this point. And we don't generally comment on investigations or discussions that we're having with regulators. However, I can say that we regularly report things to regulators that we discover ourselves. And this is, I guess, the speculation that something happened back in 2019, 3 years ago, and we've been having discussions ever since. We have ongoing discussions with regulators all over the world all the time. Sometimes we report things to proactively, and this wouldn't be a surprise to me. And I'd love to see these numbers for the banks, by the way.
Well, but on the specific issue of Iran sanctions, have you been contacted by Treasury or any other federal agencies about the possibility of sanctions violations?
Again, can't speak to that specifically, but we are in regular discussions with Treasury.
Fair enough. Okay, let's talk about sanctions of another kind. In regard to the sanctions on Tornado Cash, how has that impacted Kraken in your business?
Hasn't really, as far as we can tell. I think that what they've done might be unconstitutional. It sounds like Coin Center may be gearing up for a challenge on those grounds. I think that people have a right to financial privacy, and there are a lot of legitimate people using this service for legitimate financial privacy reasons. And I think that we'll see if this survives a challenge.
We've heard a lot of exchanges have had to freeze access to Tornado, and it's happened before with other mixers. Do you have to set in place certain procedures when this kind of thing happens?
Right. So we would prohibit withdrawals to any addresses associated with Tornado, and we would likely freeze any funds coming in from a Tornado address.
Jesse, this all goes to kind of the censorship of money, which when I first started getting into Bitcoin back in 2010, the idea was that we would be allowed to go around governments that were censoring their fiat currencies. How do you deal with this as a proponent of free speech, as a proponent of free movement of money, as a Bitcoin proponent, and still work within the regulatory framework of the U.S. government?
Yeah, it's a tough challenge. This is why we have these conversations going on all the time. We're really trying to educate regulators and law enforcement and the lawmakers about the real risks here and about the real need for financial privacy and who cryptocurrency really serves. And beyond the speculative use case here in the United States, it's really helping people all over the world who have less access to financial services. There are billions of people in the world that don't have access to a bank account. So crypto is really for those people first and foremost. And, getting around government controls around the monetary system, is a sort of secondary benefit that, you see come into play in cases like Canada, where they've shut down the bank accounts of protesters. That's the kind of scary thing we hope we don't see here in the United States. But that's another kind of insurance policy that cryptocurrency and Bitcoin specifically provides. I think we'll see a constitutional challenge against Tornado Cash, and I hope that people get their right to publish code and that code turns out to be speech and money turns out to be speech, and everyone has a right to spend their money however they want.
So do you think the sanctions on Tornado Cash are more emblematic of just an attack on open source development as a whole?
I don't think so. That the code repositories were taken down, is I think a step that was not necessary. But, I don't see a widespread attack on open source code. Open source has been around for a long time. People sharing code and, writing code together in public view for a long time. There are a lot of benefits to open source code, the transparency. People can evaluate for themselves what's really happening. I think this is mostly like a knee-jerk reaction, a hasty response to what happened with UST and Luna recently. So I think regulators are kind of overreacting, looking to protect people.
Right, they are looking to protect people. If there's anything that the last couple of months have spotlighted, Jesse, is that there is a lot of risk in these assets and not necessarily many of the protections in place for traditional financial assets. As we like to say, there is no FDIC for crypto. As we think about the liquidity crisis that has faced so many different players in the crypto industry as a whole, how are you feeling about your position? I know you just finished up your audit for 2022.
Right. Yeah, we just finished up our second audit of the year with the help of Armanino. So this is a full proof of reserves, which is cryptographically done, which allows the users to actually verify for themselves that their balance was included in the pool of funds that we had audited. So we hope to keep expanding that to even more assets. We had 7 assets covered this time. We'll keep working our way down the list. This is a level of transparency that's not offered in even the banking system. So, I think it's a step up for crypto and setting a great example for the world and, giving regulators something to feel comfortable about. In terms of the liquidity in the market, I think that the retail investors have maybe pulled back a bit from where they were 6 months ago. I think a lot of great reasons why. I think the macro environment is really tough right now. Inflation seems to be, out of control. We're by all measurements in a recession here in the United States. So that's to be expected. Obviously, when people have more discretionary income, they're making more investments. I think right now they've been worried about the price of gas and the price of the living expenses.
When you look at some of the stable coins, which are some of the most widely traded crypto assets in the world, are you concerned about the transparency there? I know that regulators want to see more in terms of what Tether or Circle have backing up these one-to-one dollar currency claims.
Yeah, I think it'd be great to get more transparency there. I think Circle's heavily audited. So, USDC, I think, is heavily supervised. Tether may be less so. However, I think, as you just saw, USDC froze a bunch of funds that were out there that were linked to Tornado Cash. And there have been some reports that people were kind of mistakenly frozen there. So, having a digital currency that's so tightly controlled and able to be influenced by maybe a hasty and maybe an unconstitutional government action is a little bit scary too. So, I think that while we're talking about CBDCs and these stable coins, people have to think that there's also this risk that, these things can be controlled by the government and frozen without, any recourse.
Overall, regulation has been a headache. In some ways, obviously helpful, but also the fact that it's just not defined enough yet has been a real headache for investors and exchange operators. How much longer do you think we have, Jesse, on this rocky road before everything's ironed out in terms of, Coinbase is trying to decide whether, or the regulators are trying to decide whether Coinbase is trading tokens or securities? That should be something that's pretty easy to tell.
You would think so. And we're about 13 years on with Bitcoin now. We still don't have answers from the government on this. I think it's largely a legislative failure. I think the regulators are going to read the law to increase their scope as much as possible. And as we've seen, with the SEC, they really take the view that basically everything is a security, and they would like to regulate everything and be the regulator of all crypto companies. However, I think Coinbase has said that they don't list securities. Kraken also does not list securities. So that means there's a disconnect somewhere between our evaluation of what these assets are and the SEC's evaluation.
Yeah.
And I think we need the legislature to clean that up.
Okay, so that's a valuation. Let's talk about your valuation, because we have seen the valuations of public companies in the crypto sphere obviously very impacted by the crypto winter. I'm wondering if yours has been affected and what that may mean for any future raises you may be looking at.
Yeah, it's hard to know with the private markets. Obviously we're not tracking the price on a minute-by-minute basis like the public markets are. So it's really hard to know. We haven't been out raising capital. We've got a very long runway of cash in the bank. We're profitable. So we don't need to go do another financing anytime soon. I think we'll probably wait for the market to improve before we go do another round.
Okay, fair enough. And finally, on the subject of market improvement, I just want to get your take on the price we have seen in these crypto assets, because you were talking back in 2021 about where you thought Bitcoin would end that year and this year. Just take a listen to what you said.
Probably by the end of the year, I think it'll be 1 Bitcoin per Lambo, and probably by the end of next year, it'll be 1 Bitcoin per Bugatti.
So, Jesse, at the end of 2021, it was trading more around $46,000. Today, it's trading south of $24,000, which maybe could buy you a Honda Civic. What's your outlook now?
Yeah, I wasn't expecting all of this craziness in the macro environment. However, I'm still hopeful that I'll be able to buy a Bugatti by the end of this year for 1 Bitcoin, but I wouldn't hold my hopes out. Would you even want to pay for the gas for such a car at this point? So, I'm still very bullish. I bought in Bitcoin again at 18,000. So I'm happy to ride it all the way back up. I'm still very bullish in the long run. The fundamentals keep improving. So I would never bet against Bitcoin.